Boom, we are live, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to the Nolan Hawkeye Anthony YouTube channel. And I thank all of you for being here, wherever you may be. And of course, however you may be listening. It is, of course, that time of year. The Iowa men's basketball season preview is upon us. I may do a women's basketball preview. It would definitely be a first for me. I haven't decided yet. But for sure, we're doing the men's. And this is definitely an interesting year, at least going into it. My preliminary thoughts on this season are that this team has talent. I think Fran McCaffrey, given the resources and the recent history of Iowa basketball, not to say that he's perfect, and I do believe I will be doing another video regarding Fran McCaffrey and his recruiting. I did one in the past, particularly looking at his in-state recruiting and how well or not well he's done in that facet. But for the most part, he's done a decent job of accumulating talent. What I always tell people is it's hard to judge talent outside of the top 10 recruiting teams in any given year because basketball recruiting is not as much of an enterprise as football is. And there just isn't the database and recruit analysis, scouting reports on some of these recruits as there is in football. I mean, in football, you have regional writers, regionals. I mean, like football is such a different landscape than basketball is. And all of these recruiting services designate far greater resources to football than they do for basketball. And the reason why that's relevant for the Iowa Hawkeyes is because Iowa will never have a top 10 recruiting class. And so it is hard to judge, given what I just said, how much talent they truly bring in on a given year. And I'll give you guys an example. A recent recruit that Iowa just landed out of he's definitely an overseas player, but he attends one of the NBA developmental academies. Chris Taggio, I think his name is, 6'8", 6'9" forward. He is ranked by On3 as a 94. Okay. That would make him the top recruit in Iowa's recruiting class. Cooper Coach, on the other hand, is rated by all the recruiting services. And because of that, seems like far more of a prized recruit. But again, and Chris Taggio is not rated by all the other recruiting services yet, but he is a 94, a top 75 recruit by On3. So it's very hard. Nonetheless, Iowa accumulates talent. And this year is going to be interesting from the standpoint that Iowa does not have a returning expected all Big Ten first team leading scorer, one of the top scorers in the Big Ten type player. The past few years, Iowa has had Luka Garza, Joe Wieskamp, Chris Murray, Keegan Murray, then Chris Murray. Even before that, you had guys like Jared Utoff, Aaron White, Peter Jock. I mean, guys that you knew were going to be able to put the ball in the hoop. This year, there are guys who can, but it's not definitive just how much they will or can do that. Now, I have my take and what I think will happen, which I will definitely share with you guys later in this video. By the way, guys, if you're not subscribed, smash that subscribe button. Your boy's got you covered for all things important when it comes to the University of Iowa. I am broadening out and talking more about the Big Ten and some other things as well, just broadening the channel's horizon now that the channel continues to grow. So we will be taking a look at what I think the top starting five will be, what I think the starting five should be, which are two different things. what it will be, what Fran will do, and what I think it will be. This year, I don't think it'll be too much different than previous years. And so we'll do that. We'll take a look at the schedule. And of course, I will give you guys my projected finish. Now, before I do that, you guys must know that I am as good as it gets in projecting Iowa men's basketball. I have been the only one who has been spot on each of the last couple of years when it comes to whether Iowa will be a good team or not. Now, some of this predated the YouTube channel, but of course, when I was doing Facebook Live and things like that, but of course, there was the year where a ton of Iowa fans, including Iowa writers and things like that, I think it was the year after Tyler Cook left, where there were fans that said, oh, Iowa will be lucky to win 17 games. They'll be lucky to be 500. And your boy said, nope, they'll be an NCAA tournament team. They were an NCAA tournament team. Even last year, the last 2 years, spot on with that. Granted, I wouldn't say it's been, necessarily difficult to project that, but you'd be surprised. So let's go ahead and take a gander here. Number one, let's start at who Iowa lost. Of course, the Iowa Hawkeyes lost Chris Murray, to the NBA. He was drafted by the Portland Trail Blazers. That's going to be a huge loss. I mean, it's nearly impossible to replace a first round type talent. Chris Murray. I mean, what is there to say about this guy? I mean, there's everything to say about this guy. I mean, he was stupid talented. He averaged 20.2 points per game, 7.9 rebounds, 2 assists per game, shot the 3 ball relatively well, was probably one of Iowa's best shooters as a whole, all around. And that is a massive loss. Chris and Keegan Murray will definitely, those two and Luka Garza will go down as 3 of the biggest steals on the recruiting trail that has ever occurred in NCAA basketball, let alone at the University of Iowa. Keegan and Chris Murray were basically regarded as mid 3-star prospects who blossomed into, basically, well, the best of the best. And it was incredible. The second guy that Iowa loses after spending 2 years with the Iowa Hawkeyes and definitely taking a massive step forward. And I'm actually really hoping that another guy that Iowa brought in can come in and fill a similar role, not in style of play necessarily, but in production, from what we have seen with Filip Rebraca, and I will definitely highlight him momentarily. Filip Rebraca was just a guy who got it done, and he competed. He played really hard. I always enjoyed watching him play. He was very physical. He was an undersized center. Had Iowa actually had a decent center that they could go to, it would have helped Filip Rebraca mightily. I think he probably could have averaged 16, 17 points per game. And not just that, if they had another, like one of him, okay, if they had an Evan Braun or a Ben Krieke, somebody who, maybe wasn't even necessarily a center, but, could, not necessarily like 6'11", 7 foot, but just a guy who could shoulder the load down low, because it is a long season in the Big Ten, guys. And it would have helped him tremendously. He was basically the only big Iowa had for the past 2 years. Now, is that on Iowa, the coaching staff, for not developing their bigs or recruiting the bigs better? Yeah, probably. But he will be a big loss, guys. I mean, he was a really good player, and like I said, competed well. And who knows what would have been possible with this ball club the last 2 years if they had just an average secondary big guy. The next guy that Iowa loses is, of course, Connor McCaffrey. And by the way, guys, not sure. And obviously, this is not a gossip channel, but But I think Connor McCaffrey is dating Caitlin Clark. I'm not sure. I think I've seen and read some things on Facebook about that. Who knows? Time will tell. But Connor McCaffrey perhaps was one of the most underappreciated players in the Fran McCaffrey era. I think Connor McCaffrey was basically a player that fans either really, really appreciated, at times too much, or thought was pure trash. And I'm here to tell you guys, he was a very important piece to the Iowa Hawkeyes. People forget that Connor McCaffrey was 6'6", 6'7". So not only was he, he was about 6'5", 6'6", not 6'7", but very, very tall and long for a guard. And that was his primary position, was playing point guard or like a combo guard. But he provided Iowa with such versatility and was able to play on the wing, especially when he started to develop a consistent three-point shot, which I really wish he would have developed sooner in his career. Had he been able to develop that sooner in his career, who knows what would have been possible for Connor after Iowa, because you cannot teach the basketball IQ, which was definitely a term that was thrown around with regards to him often. You cannot teach that. And he had it. He was extremely versatile, a great leader, and just was an all-around positive member of this Iowa basketball team. Assists, rebounds, defensively, knocking down three-point shots. And I think his biggest attribute was his versatility. Of course, Iowa did also lose Josh Agundale to the transfer portal, as well as Aaron Eulis. Aaron Eulis averaged 6.1 points per game. I was kind of surprised that he transferred, considering he was mostly a starter for the Iowa Hawkeyes last year, him and Tony Perkins. Perhaps he felt true freshman, let's see, Desante Bowen nipping at his heels. Maybe he knew that that there was an investigation coming down the pipeline. I'm not sure. Maybe he just wanted a new scenery. Who knows? But I was surprised that he transferred. He went to Nebraska, and what's done is done. I don't think he'll be a huge loss, but he would have been a nice piece to have this year for the Iowa Hawkeyes as a leader, a guy who's played in the Big Ten. And, in this day and age, I would be so frustrated if I was a coach and put all of this time and energy into developing and just making this player better in all facets, personal and on the court, only to see them take the culmination of what they were taught to another school. That would suck. And that's why some coaches don't do the college thing, because they can't get past that. And I understand it. Josh Agundale, I thought that Fran could have played him more last year. What's done is done. Perhaps he would have taken a big step forward this year. We'll see how he does at Middle Tennessee. That's where he landed. It was either Middle Tennessee. He landed in a much smaller Division I school. So we'll see what happens with that. But those are the pieces that Iowa lost. Iowa did also lose pretty prized walk-on recruit in Amarion Nimmers. But there's not really much to say there. Now, who did the Iowa Hawkeyes gain? Before I change that, Connor McCaffrey averaged 6.5 points per game, 4.1 rebounds, 3.7 assists, just really, really all around productive. He's still on the Iowa coaching staff, which is positive. What are you going to do? So I'm going to pull up the On3 recruiting site and show the recruits that Iowa is bringing in. So as you guys can see, this is what I mean. I mean, Chris Taggio here has a rating of a 94, which would make him the highest rated guy, quite frankly, that the Hawkeyes have landed in a few years. Okay. But he only has the one ranking by On3. Let's go ahead and take a look at 2023 just to go ahead and get this video moving forward here. The prize recruit would definitely be Peyton Sandfort's brother, Price Sandfort. Iowa did still have to work really hard for his commitment. And to tell you the truth, I'm not sure that he would have landed with Iowa if Peyton wasn't having such a positive experience at Iowa. Price definitely had quite a few suitors. Clemson, Stanford, a few other Big Ten schools. He's different than his brother in that he's a hell of a shooter. Okay. But he's different than his brother in that he can bring the ball up the court. He's more of a point forward type guy. I would say a little bit more athletic. And his skill set is more that of a guard. Peyton is a forward through and through. But he is developing some of those other skills. He had a grade of a 91 by On3, 4-star, 91 by 247 Sports, 4-star, ESPN, 4-star, and Rivals was a 4-star. Iowa, late in the process, this was kind of a surprise get, was landing Lajai Dembele. 89 by On3, 88 by 247 Sports, and a 4-star by Rivals. Pretty good get, and we have heard very positive things about him. Brock Harding, 89 by On3, 88 by 247 Sports, a 4-star by ESPN, and a 3-star by Rivals. The first commit for Iowa was, of course, Owen Freeman, 87 On3, 88, 247 Sports, 4-star by ESPN. ESPN has Iowa landing 3 4-star guys and 3-star by Rivals. I think if you take into account Iowa landing Evan Brahms for 1 year, he has 1 year of eligibility after playing at Belmont, and landing Ben Krieke, who was considered a top 50 and by, I guess, recruiting services considered a 4-star transfer prospect. And I believe he only has 1 year of eligibility as well. This is probably Fran's best all-around class in a while. I think if you just look at the guys coming out of high school, I would still say that's the case. They landed 4 guys, 4 really strong guys that I can see all of them having an impact for the foreseeable future. And so far, it's looking really, really good. I mean, Owen had a great overseas trip. Again, it was overseas. The quality of competition wasn't the best. Lajai Dembele, same thing. Brock Harding, we've heard excellent things. Fran McCaffrey raves about his playmaking ability. I think Brock Harding is going to be an excellent Big Ten point guard. You guys know that when I did my video on Owen Freeman, I said that Iowa needed to offer this guy. And they did, thank goodness. So I think this is going to be a really good class for Iowa. And I think all of these guys are going to be major contributors for this Iowa Hawkeye team this year. Like I said, Ben Krieke would be considered, I think 247 Sports had him as a 4-star transfer portal prospect. So before we look at Iowa's schedule, I just want to show you guys Iowa's preseason KenPom ranking. And they come in at 50. And that's actually, really optimistic and really promising to me. And I think that that's an accurate ranking for them in the preseason. I don't think that they're a top 25 team. But I do think that they have some really promising pieces that can win them a lot of games. I think the biggest issue that Iowa will have. And ultimately, it may just need to be a kind of a committed approach rather than a one guy getting 25 and we'll see whoever else can chip it, like we've seen the last 3 years. Chris or Keegan gets 20 plus points and then Philip chips in 12 and whoever else chips in 9. Very seldom did we get games where Chris had 20, Tony had 20 and things like that. Now it's possible because Iowa's offense is so dang good. But I think this Iowa team has really good shooting, better than it had last year. I think all the way around the court, Iowa has guys that can shoot the basketball, especially from deep. So I think 50 is accurate. I think that is fine. And ultimately, when I look at this and I see, okay, their adjusted offensive efficiency is a preseason 12. Okay, well, I can definitely see Iowa yet again being a top 10 offensive efficiency team. Is that what it's going to take for them to be an NCAA tournament team? Maybe, maybe not. They have a 108 grade in adjusted defensive efficiency. And I've long said that if Iowa could just be a top 80, top 75 defensive efficiency team, the sky would be the limit. And at times they've been around that mark. Last year, they kind of had a spurt there where they dropped massively in the defensive efficiency ratings and they never really recovered. Let's see if we can look at last year's. Yep, we sure can. So I think it's accurate. And, just speaking on this year's defensive possibility, Tony Perkins has said it, and other Iowa players have said it, and I agree. I think Iowa has a more athletic team this year than they had last year. And not like way more athletic, but slightly more athletic. I think what Iowa and what Fran McCaffrey has tried to do and what I think the game of college basketball is moving towards, the game of college basketball and just basketball in general is moving towards shooters in general, and preferably having them be like 6'6" to 6'9" guys that can shoot the basketball, having multiple forwards on your team that are versatile. That is what Iowa's moving to, and they got it. They're going to have Ben Krieke, they're going to have Owen Freeman, they're going to have Lajai Dejeme, they're going to have Patrick McCaffrey, Peyton Sandfort, Price Sandfort. I mean, they have multiple forwards on this team. Last year, Iowa was 168th in adjusted defensive efficiency, but was top 5 in adjusted O. So, and just, going back to what we see here, I think that this is accurate. Like, I know I've said that a few times now, but, their numbers, I think going in are pretty accurate. If I had to guess, I think Iowa will hover around the 8 to 15 in adjusted offense efficiency. They're not going to be as powerful as they were last year, as good as they were last year, just because they don't have a Chris Murray that can just go and get them buckets. But, they'll still be good. And I think that they have the ability to be better defensively than they were last year. But I've said that for the last couple of years, and that is one of the things that I have been wrong about, unfortunately. I think Evan Brom will help defensively a lot for them this year. And, we'll see what the development of Riley Mulvey is. People forget that Riley Mulvey actually reclassified and came to Iowa when he should have been a senior in high school. So I wouldn't be surprised if his development is really pronounced. Now, he missed the overseas trip, but we'll see. So this is the schedule for Iowa. Nothing crazy. I think that they put together a pretty good schedule. The name of the game nowadays is to hit that sweet spot of having just enough net quality victory games, which Iowa will get plenty of in the Big Ten. But when shaping your out of conference, you want just enough, but you don't want it to be too powerful so that you lose every single one of them. So, that's that. Of course, Iowa cannot lose to Nebraska, Omaha, or whoever the heck that they lost to last year, or what was it, North Dakota or Alabama State? I can't remember who it was. They can't do that. That was just a massive problem. Let's see who they lost to. They lost to Eastern Illinois. We cannot have that again. But I think it's a good out of conference schedule. Creighton, Oklahoma, chance to play Seton Hall or USC. North Florida has been a pretty good basketball program of late. Iowa State, Iowa has a chance to have multiple quad 1, quad 2 victories by the time they enter Big Ten play. So last but not least, guys, what is my projected starting lineup? Well, and what do I think it should be? Well, we'll go below my tier list here. Tony Perkins is definitely going to be a starter for the Iowa Hawkeyes, whether he plays primarily point guard or shooting guard, who knows? I think it's going to be kind of both of them. I think Desante Bowen is going to be the other guard that starts for Iowa. I think it's going to be Peyton Sandfort. And this is actually the lineup that I would go with. Patrick McCaffrey, although I wouldn't be surprised if Patrick McCaffrey continues his role off the bench to have some firepower off the bench. Iowa does not, unless Riley Mulvey develops strongly and is much improved from what he was last year, which there's no evidence of that, given who Iowa has brought in. Iowa will not have a Luka Garza or, Adam Woodbury or anybody like that. So this is a pretty good starting lineup. The only guy that I see maybe not starting would be Patrick McCaffrey and Fran continuing to have him come off the bench. Starting Evan Brom or, for defensive purposes and to have a bigger body in there, or Owen Freeman. I wouldn't be surprised. Those would be the two names that I would look out for, would be Owen Freeman, because he's 6'10", as more of a true center that can go in there, defend and rebound, and or Evan Brom. So I wouldn't be surprised. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do or Owen Freeman or Evan Brom. So that is the starting lineup. And last but not least, what is my prediction for this Iowa Hawkeye team? Well, guys, listen, I think that the talent is there. I think that Iowa did a good job this past season recruiting and bringing talent in. Ben Krieke, we'll see how he handles the move and the jump to the Big Ten. My only reservation with him is he's not super athletic, and the Big Ten is a very athletic league. Ultimately, he was a guy, and we've seen that, Philip Obracha was the same. I mean, Philip Obracha, people forget, averaged like 15 to 17 points for North Dakota, and then he comes to Iowa and barely averages 7 points his first season. And what I'm getting at is, it's one thing to average double figures on a good team, and it's quite another to average double figures on a FCS mid-major type school that does not win a lot. But just for your guys' edification here, I want to show you guys what Ben is bringing to this team. He's definitely a very skilled big guy, though, folks. And, he averaged 19.4 points per game, 5.9 rebounds. Anybody who can average almost 20 points a game in college basketball, regardless, is a very talented guy. Now, I would argue that Ben comes from a slightly higher level of competition from Valparaiso than uh uh oh my gosh, I cannot believe I'm blanking on his name, than Philip Bracha. But like I said, time will tell. Very talented, but we shall see. And I think Iowa fans should be excited about what he can possibly do in the Iowa Hawkeye offense. So the talent is there, guys. That's what I'm getting at. I like the pieces that they have brought in. And you know what? I'm actually very optimistic and excited about the freshness to this Iowa team. I think Tony Perkins is going to take a step forward. I think the two alpha males on this team are going to be Tony Perkins, Ben Krieke. If I had to predict the scoring averages, I would say that this is going to be a more scoring by committee situation where, Tony Perkins averages 14 to 16 points a game. If I had to guess, I'd say he averages 15 points a game. Ben Krieke averages the same thing, 15 to 16. Although, I think Ben has the opportunity to average slightly more at about 16, 17. Patrick McCaffrey averages 10 to 12. Peyton Sandfort averages about 13. Peyton Sandfort is definitely going to take a major step forward in his scoring. And we have heard a ton of good stuff about him. So that is kind of what I'm envisioning. And that's hard to defend. So this Iowa team, I think, has every chance to make the NCAA tournament again for what would be a sixth straight time if you count the Coof year. And if I had to predict where Iowa will finish in the Big Ten, I would say that they finish fifth or sixth in the Big Ten. And if they do that, it will be considered a successful year. And I think the expectation should be NCAA tournament this year. And, anywhere from 17 to 22 victories this year. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Like, comment, share, subscribe. You guys know the drill. If you guys want to donate to the channel, you absolutely can. I'll put all that information in the description box. You guys can do it through the donation button on this channel as well. And last but not least, DBAP, don't be a pussy willow and facts or feelings, because your feelings just don't matter. Love you guys. See you guys next time. Go Hawks. Bye-bye.